Hello! I've been sent some more products by Lightwish, some watercolour goodies today, a set of metallic gold paints, and a set of 24 watercolour tubes. I'll take a closer look at both of these, do some swatching and paintings, and we'll find out if they're any good. Let's get into it! I think I'll start with this set of gold paints because they're so shiny. I have a few different sets and quite often they come with 6 colours. This one has 8, which is quite interesting. And there's a picture of the palette box on the back. Now quite often these metallic sets seem to come in cardboard boxes, but this one looks like a really sturdy plastic one, and I'll pull the whole thing out. It even has a water brush in there, which is quite nice. And I have no idea what that card says, so we'll just put that to one side. The paints come in those large flat pans that we're used to seeing with Japanese watercolours in particular, but these ones are made in China. And if I can open the box, there we go! Those are so shiny on camera, and they look beautifully vibrant. There's even a black gold in there, which is highly unusual, and there's also a few really yellow looking ones. The water brush looks pretty standard, and I'll be using it a little bit later in the video for my painting. It's a lovely plastic box, and this is one of the better presented ones that I've ever seen. So I'll put this over to one side and I'll take a look at this other box that was sent to me. And I'll be linking everything in the description below from what the company has sent me. Unfortunately, they don't seem to be available in Australia at the moment. That's such a bummer. But these are Masters paints, and they have this logo Marie's on there, and I have seen Marie's paints around. I think Lightwish is more the distributing company, and they do have quite a lot of brands, so one of their sister companies is Paul Rubens, and there are a few others as well. But here I was trying to figure out why there are 2 colour palettes and which one belongs with this box. I'm pretty sure it's the top one. Let's open it up and have a look. It took me quite a while to get into this box. It's very well packaged, and the inside part is wrapped in plastic, so it was a little struggle just to pull it out to begin with. And I hadn't opened it previously, so this was the first time I was doing it. But here we go, all of the tubes neatly packaged, and there are 24 colours in this set. After I had read some of the colour names, I could confirm that it is the top chart on here. And we'll take a closer look in a minute, but I need to get that plastic off. The tubes are labelled Masters, and I think that's the professional line of the Marie's paints. I'm a little bit confused by all of the names on them, but from the information I was given, these are professional paints rather than student grade. And I saw another set on Amazon of Marie's paints that said they were student grade, and they do look quite different to these ones, so maybe that's right. I hope it is. Now, I know there's quite a lot of conjecture in the comments I've seen on different YouTube channels as to whether these are actually professional artist grade paints, and all I can really do is go from the information that's provided to me by the company and do my own testing in the form of painting. So please don't shoot the messenger. I'm just showing you everything that I looked at, and I'm trying to be as transparent as possible with my review in these. Picking out a rogue bit of card there. So here's a closer look at all of the tubes. They are 9mm each, which is an interesting number. They have the paint names, the pigment numbers, and they also have some Lightfast star ratings. So that always makes me happy. I don't have to look up any of these things online, and look at that paint on my hand. I don't know where that came from. And I just took another look at the box. They are definitely labelled as artist grade paints. They look quite nice. I like that they have the colour on the label as well, and the label colours match the paints themselves quite well. But I still want to swatch them to get a better look. So I was going to put them in a metal tin like I've got these Paul Rubens ones, but I realised that I have run out of them, and I decided not to buy any more at the moment. This would have been perfect though for this set, having 24 colours. Anyway, I had to dig around to see if I had anything I could put them in, and I've come up with this plastic palette, which I bought in an art shop ages ago, and it's been languishing in my studio doing nothing, so now I'm going to put it to use. As you can see, the containers are massive, and there's 3 rows of 8, but I'm just going to use it anyway, and I'm only dotting a small amount of each watercolour in there. The orange exploded everywhere. That was so annoying, and you can see how much it stained the plastic already. But thankfully, all of the rest of the tubes were easy to pour out. The paint's nice and smooth. The only one that had split out from the gum arabic was the lemon yellow, which is the second one in, and with a little bit of mixing that went back together perfectly well. But all of the other paints are really beautiful just pouring them straight out of the tube. You can see they're looking pretty vibrant as well, in particular that very messy orange. So I'll just finish pouring the last one, mix up that yellow, and here they all are squeezed out into this huge container. And I did end up rearranging some of the colours around, particularly the blues and greens, because they just weren't in the order that I wanted. So now I think it's in a much better order, with the greens next to the browns, which is what I always like to do. And now it's time to swatch everything out. And I'll just grab my sketchbook. I'm using my Hahnemuhle A4 sized sketchbook with 100% cotton paper. I prepared my charts in advance so we don't have to sit through all of that. And I'm just clipping the page down because for some reason it would not stay down. And I've drawn a black line on the white square just so that we can see if it's opaque at all. Now there's one more thing I needed to do before swatching everything, and that's get these gold paints and drop on a bit of water to each one, because metallic paints always take a little while to activate. So I find that if you just either drop some water on or spray it on, this is going to wake the paint up, and usually after a few minutes you can lift that paint really easily. If you just try to paint it from dry, you just won't get any shimmer off it, and it's so frustrating. I do this with all of my metallic sets. It's just the nature of the mica in them. It takes a little while to dissolve. So I've set those off to one side, and I'll definitely swatch this lot out first. Now the paint is still wet because I didn't have time to let it dry before swatching them, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I started off with this brush and then the ferrule fell off, would you believe? So I had to switch brushes, it's hilarious. So now I have a green handled one. I added water to the paper first just to see how the paints would disperse. Most of them don't really disperse that much. And this does vary from brand to brand in professional watercolours anyway. I've included all of the information that was on the tubes, so the paint names, the pigments that are in there, and also the light fast star rating. They're all 3 and 4 stars, and 4 stars I think would mean very light fast. Now interestingly enough, alizarin crimson is 4 stars, but if you know anything about the pigments, genuine alizarin crimson is PR83 and it's not light fast at all, whereas this PR206 I think is a more light fast red pigment. As far as I can tell, the pigments that they've used in these paints are pretty common, and I've seen them a lot of times in other brands. And for the most part, it seems like they have used light fast pigments. But of course, it's impossible to know how light fast they are unless you hang them in the window for a year or so. But the colours they've used are nice and bright. This is a very standard colour palette and would be pretty good for any level, which is what I think they're marketing to. It's a solid, basic set of colours. Now, I did swatch the golds onto the white paper to begin with, just because I like to see what they're going to do on plain white paper. That blue gold looks insanely yellow on the white by comparison to the yellow gold, but in a moment I'm going to swatch them on the black and you'll see how they change a little bit. It's also very hard to show how shiny they are, but they do have a wonderful metallic sheen, which we'll see once they dry. And on the black, the blue gold is a deeper yellow and the yellow gold looks much brighter. So it's interesting how they do change a bit depending on the type of background you put them on. But they were activating perfectly well after I'd let the water sit on them, and I had no issues painting them out. You could see just how goopy it's become with all of that water, and my suggestion is once you've finished using it, just let them air dry completely, and then when you're ready to use them again, just put some more water on them and they'll reactivate. So here are all the paints once they've dried. I've only done one layer. There was a bit of a drying shift, they are a bit paler now, but otherwise they're still looking quite vibrant, especially the greens and the reds. Now I am seeing a bit of texturing on here in a few of the colours, and that's not granulation, but I actually think it's the paper rather than the paints doing this, because I'd done a painting on the other side of the paper and I think that had affected the sizing a little bit. The gold paints look nice and metallic. If I flick them in the light, you could probably see how they're sheening. But I find that metallics generally look better with a dark background. They look wonderful on here and we can really see how shiny and bright they are. That yellow gold in particular is really beautiful. And I'll just put them side by side so you can see how the background is affecting the colour of the golds. But usually what I do with them is put them over the top of my paintings, and that's what I'm going to end up doing today. We'll see that a bit later in the video, but first I need to start an actual painting. So today's artwork is going to be a picture of glass jugs and vases on a windowsill, And I tried to use as many colours as I could, although I didn't end up using the browns for this because I of course went for the bright colours. I'm using wet on dry technique because this paper does not like wet on wet, so it's just easier to paint onto the dry paper and then kind of blend it out on the paper as I go. I started by painting the flowers, and then while I was letting those dry, I'm going in with one of these vases. It looks a bit distorted on the camera for some reason, but I can assure you it's not actually as leaning over as what it looks here. And I was using a mix of the bright blue and the ultramarine for this particular vase, also leaving a few white highlights from the paper. The paints layered on each other very well, and I had no issues with them. The colours are nice and vibrant, although they do need 2 or 3 layers to get really vibrant, and that's perfectly fine. They're wonderfully transparent for the most part. The white itself is a titanium white, so there is a little bit of opacity in that. That's another one I didn't end up using because I just generally don't use white watercolour, and I always forget about it. But these paints on their own are just really nice to paint with, and I didn't feel like I needed to mix them with white to get a lighter colour. I just added darker colour over the top and built up the values that way. That green is the Viridian, which is actually a phthalo green blue shade, but I don't mind that it's not genuine Viridian because phthalo green blue shade is always a nicer colour. And I'm using their magenta-y pinky colour for this vase, and they've labelled that one as Permanent Rose. Really pretty colour. I painted over the stems to make it look like they're actually inside the vase, and that worked out pretty well. The green of the stems did not lift, and so I was able to glaze that pink over the top without having a horrible mess mixed up together. The purple I'm using here is definitely a dioxazine purple, which is labelled as Brilliant Purple in the set. For the background, I've mostly gone with diluted Payne's Grey, and I mixed in a little bit of blue and purple as well. They're up against a window, and I just wanted to leave it fairly plain so the background doesn't get too busy. I will also paint in a darker windowsill, and there's a curtain in the left-hand corner. I added a subtle colour reflection onto the surface as well, so it looks like the light is shining through them a bit. So overall, I have no complaints with this paint set. It feels to me a pretty standard one. They're not super amazing, but they do feel like they're a much higher grade than student level paints. Just the transparency of them indicates to me that they're a finer quality. There's no opacity in them, there's no fillers that I can notice when I'm painting with these colours. Definitely no chalkiness or anything like that. So a set like this is definitely marketed at a broader range of people, and also it's more budget friendly, so if you're starting out and you want some paints that are actually good, then a set like this is probably going to work really well, although you can see a huge drying shift in the Payne's Grey because it had gone much lighter, and I could have done another layer over the top. But this is where I started going over everything with the gold paints, and I used the white gold on the curtain and it actually made it look really transparent, like it's a net curtain, so I really like that effect. Of course, I got way out of hand with the gold. I can't help myself, it's so shiny, and I just had to cover everything with it. I was putting gold highlights on it instead of white highlights, and I have to say that I'm super impressed with the gold set in particular. I think it's a really good value, and the quality of it is really great. It's definitely competitive with some other bigger brands out there, that's for sure, and I like that it has 8 colours instead of 6, that's always a bonus. You could probably see how shiny that black gold looks over the top of the Payne's Grey. I'd signed it thinking I was finished, but no, I just had to paint on some more of that yellow gold because it's so pretty, and I was just trying to tie in the flowers with the background by dotting it around everywhere. Here's the finished painting. The scanner has not picked up the metallic very well, and I realised later that the top part of the window frame is very lopsided. Oops! But if I move the page around, you can see how the metallic is really shining, and flaws aside, I do like how this painting turned out. Nice bright colours, everything's lovely and transparent, and pretty much everything I want in a watercolour. So I don't have any complaints with the products today. My favourite is definitely this gold set, and you can see how goopy the paint is there. I did let that sit to dry. And I totally forgot to mention that I used the water brush to paint on the gold in the painting. I don't know if you noticed that at all, but yeah, perfectly fine, no issues with the brush. If this gold set is available where you are, I do definitely recommend it, and I'd give it a 10 out of 10 because I just think it's fantastic. And that is my honest opinion. I really like the box it comes in too. Now the watercolours themselves, they're perfectly fine. I mean, they're not super exciting or anything, but as a standard set, they're nice. I'd give them maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10, just because they're not really exciting with lots of granulating colours or anything like that. But the actual quality of them is pretty decent, and they did re-wet well enough once I'd let them dry overnight. I think they look quite nice as a set in the box. And you can see I barely used anything out of the tubes, and there's still heaps of paint in the palette, so a little seems to go a long way with these. I'll just switch back to the swatch chart here. I'm kind of wishing I used the burnt umber because that looks really pretty on the swatch. I think my least favourite is the sap green. That was kind of low tinting by comparison to some of the others. Now with the funny texturing that was on that side, I was having a look here. There's maybe a tiny bit on this part of the painting, and possibly a little bit in the green one as well. It seems to be the blues and the greens that are doing that. So it may well be the paint, but this paper is also a bit dodgy, so it's hard to know exactly for sure. But that's something to bear in mind. And here's everything I've got for today. I really enjoyed using all of these paints, and I genuinely love that gold set. I think that's awesome. So I hope this helps you out if you're shopping around and you happen to see these paints online, or if you're looking for a couple of standard sets and some shiny metallics. These are some good options. I'll link Lightwish's website down below. They've got everything on there. You'll find a whole bunch of Paul Rubens stuff too. But let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'd appreciate a thumbs up for this video, and you might want to click the subscribe button for more videos. I'll link a couple more reviews up here so you can check those out as well. I hope you're all having a great day out there, and I'll see you really soon in my next video. Swatch you later. Bye!